The garden party in the dream. My poor flowers seem to have all wilted, exclaimed little Ida sadly. They were so beautiful last night, and now their leaves have drooped and withered. Why is this? She posed the question to the student sitting on the couch, seeking his counsel because she was fond of him. Not only was he adept at telling captivating stories, but he could also create various interesting cutouts, patterns of a little girl dancing in a heart chamber, flowers, and a grand palace with doors that open independently. He was a cheerful student. "Why do the flowers look so lifeless today?" she asked again, showing him a bouquet of wilted flowers. "Do you know what they did last night?" the student countered. "These flowers attended a ball, so they've bowed their heads today." "But, can flowers really dance?" little Ida asked in wonder. "Yes, indeed, they dance," said the student. "Once it gets dark and we are all asleep, they burst into joyful dancing. Almost every night, they have a ball." "Can children attend this ball too?" "Of course," the student replied. "Even the tiny daisies and lily of the valley." "Where do these beautiful flowers dance?" little Ida inquired. "Have you ever visited the Grand Palace just outside the city gates? The king moves there in the summer, and it has the most beautiful garden with flowers of every color. Have you seen those swans? When you throw them breadcrumbs, they swim towards you. That's where the beautiful ball is held, believe me." "I went to that garden with my mother yesterday," said little Ida, "but all the leaves on the trees had fallen, and there was not a single flower. Where have they gone? I saw so many flowers there in the summer." "They've moved inside the palace," said the student. "You see, once the king and his court move to the city, the flowers immediately run inside the palace to play joyfully. You should see how happy they are. The two beautiful roses take the throne as the flower king and queen. All the red coxcombs stand on either side, bowing respectfully. They are the flower king's courtiers. All the pretty flowers attend, and a grand ball commences. The blue violets are the little naval cadets. They call the hyacinths and saffron miss and dance with them. The tulips and the tall peonies act as the old ladies, supervising the ball to ensure good manners are kept." "But," little Ida curiously pressed, "when the flowers dance freely in the palace, does no one discover them?" "It's a secret known only to the flowers and the moonlight," the student said mysteriously. "Although the old night watchman of the palace does patrol with his keys, he has never truly seen the ball. He carries a large bunch of keys. But as soon as the flowers hear the keys jingle, they become silent and hide behind the long curtains, only poking their heads out stealthily. The old night watchman merely says, "I smell flowers here," but he can't see them. "That's hilarious," laughed little Ida, clapping her hands. "But, can I see these flowers?" "Yes," said the student. "Next time you go, just peek through the windows, and you will see them." I did this today. There was a long daffodil lying lazily on the couch, thinking herself a court lady, no doubt. Can the flowers from the botanical garden go there too? Can they walk that far? Yes, no problem, said the student. If they wish, they can even fly. Have you ever noticed the red, yellow, and white butterflies? They resemble the flowers as if they were transformed from the petals, as if they were once part of them. They used to leap high into the air from the flower stems, flapping their petals as if they were tiny wings. And then they fly away. Because they are so polite, they are also allowed to fly during the day. They don't have to stay at home, stiffly on the flower stems anymore. So, their petals eventually turn into real wings. You've seen this with your own eyes. It's quite possible that the flowers from the botanical garden have never been to the king's palace and might not know how fun it is there at night. I can teach you something that will surely astonish that nearby botany professor. You know him, don't you? Next time you go into his garden, please take a message to a flower, saying that there's a grand ball happening at the palace. Then that flower will tell all the other flowers, and they will all fly away. When the professor enters the garden, he will find no flowers. He will never guess where they have all gone. But how can flowers talk to each other? Flowers can't speak. Of course not, the student replied. But they can make gestures. You must have noticed that when the wind gently blows, the flowers nod their heads and sway all their green leaves. They all understand these gestures, just like speaking. Can the professor understand their gestures? Little Ida asked. Of course, he can. One morning, he walked into his garden and saw a large thorny nettle gesturing to the beautiful red carnation with its leaves. It said, "You are so beautiful, I love you so much." But the old professor didn't like such things, so he immediately slapped the nettle on its leaves, and the leaves stung his fingers. Since then, he has never dared to touch a nettle again. That's quite funny, said little Ida, bursting into laughter. Filling such bizarre notions into a child's head, a counselor murmured to himself. He was visiting at the time and sitting on a couch. He didn't quite like the student, and when he saw him making some funny and silly cutouts, he was ready to complain. Sometimes, the cutouts were of a man hanging on a gallows, holding a heart, indicating he had stolen many people's hearts. Sometimes, it was of an old witch placing her husband on her nose, flying on a broomstick. The counselor disapproved of such things, often saying, filling such bizarre notions into a child's head, all these unreasonable fantasies. However, little Ida found the story about the flowers told by the student exciting, and she thought about it for a long time. The flowers had drooped their heads because they had danced all night and were tired. Undoubtedly, they were sick. So, she took them to some of her other toys. These toys were on a pretty little table, and the drawer was filled with her beloved things. Her doll, Sophia, was sleeping in the doll's bed, but little Ida told her, "Sophia, you really should get up now. Tonight, you should sleep in the drawer. The poor flowers are all sick. They should sleep in your bed. Maybe then they will get better." So, she moved the doll aside. But Sophia looked very unhappy and didn't say a word. She was angry because she couldn't sleep in her own bed. Little Ida placed the flowers on the doll bed and covered them with a tiny blanket. She told them they must now sleep quietly, and she would brew a pot of tea for them to drink so their bodies could recover and they could get up tomorrow. She also drew the curtains tightly shut over their bed to keep the sun from shining in their eyes. Throughout the night, she kept thinking about what the student had told her. Before bed, she had to peek behind the drawn curtains. Lined up along the window were some of her mother's beautiful flowers, hyacinths and crocuses. She whispered to them quietly, "I know you're going to a ball tonight." But the flowers pretended not to understand a word. No leaf stirred. Yet, little Ida was in the know. After lying in bed for a while, she thought how interesting it would be to see those lovely flowers dancing in the king's palace. "I wonder if my flowers have really been there." Then she fell asleep. In the night, she awoke again. She dreamed of the flowers and the student, whom the counselor often scolded for filling her head with silly notions. Little Ida's room was very quiet, and the lamp was still burning on the table. Her parents were asleep. "I wonder if my flowers are still lying in Sophia's bed," she said to herself. "I wish I knew." She lifted her head slightly and looked towards the door. Her flowers and all her toys were placed outside it. She listened quietly, and it seemed as if someone was playing the piano in the next room, so beautifully and softly as she had never heard before. "Now the flowers must be dancing," she said. "Oh, God, I really want to see them." But she dared not get out of bed for fear of waking her parents. "I just wish they would come here," she said. But the flowers did not come, and the music kept playing, sweetly captivating her. She could no longer lie still. She crept out of her little bed, quietly went to the door, and peeked into the next room. What she saw was truly incredible. The room was not lit, yet it was bright as the moonlight shone through the windows, illuminating the middle of the floor. It was almost as bright as day inside, and all the hyacinths and crocuses stood in 2 rows on the floor. There wasn't a single flower on the windowsill, just some empty flower pots. The various flowers danced beautifully on the floor, forming long chains. They linked their green leaves together, swaying their stems. A tall yellow lily sat beside the piano. Little Ida had seen him once in the summer, for she remembered well that the student had said, "This flower looks like Miss Linny," and everyone laughed at him. But now, indeed, little Ida thought the tall yellow flower resembled the lady. She played the piano just like her, turning her oval-shaped yellow face from side to side and nodding in time with the beautiful music. Not a single flower noticed little Ida. She saw a big blue anemone jump onto the table in the middle. The toys were placed up there. It went to the doll's bed and drew the curtains aside. The sick flowers were lying in bed, but they quickly got up and nodded to the other flowers, indicating they wanted to join the dance. The old chimney sweep toy got up too, his lower lip chipped, and he bowed to the beautiful flowers, which didn't look sick. They jumped out of bed, mingling happily with the others. Suddenly, something seemed to fall from the table, drawing little Ida's attention. She looked that way, and it was a birch rod given to her for carnival. It had jumped down from the table. It thought itself one of the flowers. It was very cute, and little Ida smiled warmly. A little wax doll rode atop it, wearing a broad hat much like the counselor's. The birch rod hopped into the midst of the flowers on its 3 red legs, stamping heavily on the floor. It danced the Polish mazurka. But the other flowers couldn't perform this dance because they were too light and couldn't stamp their feet. The little wax figure suddenly grew taller and more prominent, rushing like a whirlwind towards the paper flowers, saying, filling a child's mind with such strange ideas. All these unreasonable fantasies. This wax figure looked exactly like the counselor, with his broad hat and yellow, angry face, which also resembled the counselor's. But the paper flowers slapped him on his thin legs, causing him to shrink back into a tiny wax figure. His appearance was quite amusing. Little Ida couldn't help but laugh. The birch rod continued its dance, forcing the counselor to join. Now, it didn't matter whether he grew thicker, thinner, or remained a little yellow wax man with a big black hat. It made no difference. Then, some other flowers, especially those that had slept in the doll's bed for a while, complimented him, and the birch rod allowed him to rest. At that moment, a series of rapid knocks came from the depth of the drawer as if little Ida's beloved doll, Sophia, and her companions were calling for something. They lay there quietly as if dreaming of a mysterious world far from the hustle and bustle. The chimney sweep quickly ran to the table, lying flat on the ground, arching his back to push the drawer open a bit. Sophia sat up, looking around in surprise. "A ball must be happening here," she whispered in astonishment. "Why wasn't I told before?" Her voice carried a hint of light reproof, but was filled more with curiosity and anticipation for what was about to unfold. "Would you like to dance with me?" asked the chimney sweep. "You would make a handsome dancing partner," she responded, turning her back to him. She sat down in the drawer. She thought surely a flower would come to ask her to dance. But no flower came. So, she deliberately coughed a few times. Ahem. 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 Yet still, no flower asked her to dance. The chimney sweep danced alone and did so very well. Sophia watched as no flowers came to ask her, so she intentionally fell from the drawer to the floor, making a loud noise. All the flowers ran over, surrounding her, asking if she had hurt herself. These flowers, especially those that had slept on her bed, were very kind to her. But she wasn't hurt at all. Little Ida's flowers were thankful for the comfortable bed they had slept in. They lifted her high, asking her to dance with them in the center of the floor, where the moonlight shone. All the other flowers formed a circle around her. Now Sophia was delighted. She told them they could use her bed anytime, and she wouldn't mind sleeping in the drawer. But the flowers said, "We thank you from our hearts, but we won't live much longer. By tomorrow, we will die. Please tell little Ida to bury us in the garden, next to the canary that lies there. Next summer, we will return to life and be even more beautiful." "No, that can't be," Sophia said firmly, her voice laced with undisguised emotion. She gently kissed the flowers as if assuring them that whatever happened, she would be there for them. Suddenly, the living room door opened, and a throng of beautiful flowers danced in. Little Ida couldn't figure out where they had come from. They must be the flowers from the king's palace. Leading the procession were two bright roses wearing golden crowns, clearly the flower king and queen. Following them came a group of beautiful violets and carnations, bowing in all directions. They even brought a band with them. The large poppies and peonies blew on pea pods, turning their faces red from the effort. The blue hyacinths and small white snowdrops made a tinkling sound as if they were adorned with bells. The music was quite amusing. Soon, many other flowers joined in the dance. Blue pansies, pink primroses, daisies, and lilies of the valley all arrived. The flowers kissed each other in greeting. They looked utterly beautiful. The flowers bid each other good night, so little Ida also went to bed, everything she had seen replayed in her dreams. When she woke up the next day, she hurried to the little table to see if the flowers were still there. She pulled back the canopy that covered the little bed. Yes, the flowers were all there, but they looked even more faded than the day before. Sophia was still lying in the drawer where Ida had placed her, looking like she hadn't fully woken up. "Do you remember what you were supposed to tell me?" Ida gently asked, her gaze soft on Sophia, who, being a doll, naturally did not respond. "Oh, you naughty thing," Ida said with a hint of affection and feigned reproach. "But they still danced with you." Then, she took out a small paper box adorned with beautiful birds, gently opened it, and carefully placed the wilted flowers inside as if laying them in a tender resting place. "This will be your beautiful coffin," she said. "When my 2 cousins from Norway come to visit, they will help me bury you in the garden so you can grow back next summer and become even more beautiful flowers." Her cousins from Norway were 2 lively boys, one named Jonas and the other Adolf. Their father had given them 2 bows, which they brought with them to show to Ida. She told them the entire story of the poor, dead flowers. They decided to hold a funeral for the flowers. With bows slung over their shoulders, the boys led the procession. Little Ida followed, carrying the box filled with faded flowers. They dug a little grave in the garden. Ida first kissed the flowers, then placed them, box and all, into the ground. Jonas and Adolf shot arrows over the grave as a salute. On this peaceful night, may all beautiful dreams surround you, cradling you into a night of good sleep. Good night.